And the only thing she shared with the judge was that, Your Honor, the officer didn't listen to me and what I was trying to explain, like her perspective, her side of the story, why she did what she did. And the judge just dismissed it. And so I learned something there is that, in something that really helps generally in life is allow people to share their side of whatever situation is, whether it makes a difference or not. But a lot of people have that part of the process and at least being heard usually helps for a better outcome.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What up, Black and Blue fam? Welcome to the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. My name is Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you for pulling up because I got a real nice one for you. But first, let me ask y'all, please click those like, subscribe, and bell icons right down here on my YouTube channel. And if you're listening to me on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And finally, make sure you check me out on any one of my social media pages for even more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, so with that down, let's jump right into it. My guest is today, he's doing his part to cultivating the next generation of police officers in his community. So everybody, help me welcome to the show, Chesapeake, Virginia, Master Police Recruiter, Dupree Foster. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Dale?
I'm excellent. Thank you for joining the show.
You're welcome. I appreciate the invite.
All right. So you were in Chesapeake, Virginia. Tell everybody about, exactly where that is. I don't know where that is.
Yeah. So Chesapeake, Virginia, easiest way is East Coast. We neighbor the main cities of Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So we're pretty close to the ocean front. In the city of Chesapeake, it's actually the second largest city in Virginia, but we're way on the East Coast.
Okay. Are you originally from there?
From Virginia, so about an hour from where I live now. So I'm originally from Gloucester County, Virginia. So it's kind of a rural area, but not too far from where I am now.
Okay, all right. So you're originally from Virginia, born and raised, VA boy.
Yep.
Nice. We were speaking off air that my daughter goes to Howard up in there in the DMV. It's probably a little, What is that, north of where you are?
It is. Yep, it's north from. It's probably about a 3.5, 4 hour drive from here.
Oh, okay. So not too close. Not close at all.
Yeah.
Not close at all. All right. So what's going on in Virginia today?
It's hot, man. I was actually just in Florida last week for vacation with the family, and just got back to work today. But it's been hot lately. It's been crazy with the heat. I know we were just talking offline about it being hot where you are. I thought it was hot here, but out there in California, I got the heat turned up out there as well.
Yeah, we got that dry heat though. You guys got the humidity.
Yeah, the humidity is what. Yeah, yep. And that's the hard part. You step outside, like, can I breathe?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about retiring to Florida here in another year. And
really?
Only time we've been there is December, November or so, and it's beautiful. But we haven't been there this time of year. So we're gonna do that when we take the daughter back to DC, so she can go back to school. We're gonna head down to Florida and see if we really want to do it.
A lot of people do it. It's funny because I was there, like I said, last week, and surprisingly, it was hotter in Virginia than it was down there at the time. But yeah.
And we got the hurricanes going on, like in the Houston area right now. Is that affecting you guys?
Yeah, it's not. No, I have a sister who's an RN. She lives out in Houston, but she's been telling me about some of the stuff going on out there.
Okay, yeah. Well, you be safe out there. So, Chesapeake, Virginia PD. How long you been there?
So with this department, just over 11 years with Chesapeake. Prior to being here, I worked with James City County Police Department in the Williamsburg area of Virginia, which is basically where Busch Gardens is located. So that's where I started my career right out of college.
Nice, congratulations. And
Thank you.
you are a master police recruiter. Tell everybody about what that entails.
Yeah, so got into recruiting just over 6 years ago. So my full-time job, full-time primary assignment is getting people into the department who are interested in law enforcement. So anything from posting the job posting to speaking with, following up with all the applicants who apply, to scheduling us to go to different career events, to purchasing, giveaway items and materials and things like that for applicants to help them. That's my main goal now, is really facilitating the hiring process as far as getting people started. Once they pass the initial physical ability test, that then are passed over to the background investigations unit, which is part of my team, but then they handle the rest of the process. So I'm based on that front end, but it's also with website updates and social media. The biggest part is really that relationship cultivation, speaking with people who are interested or might think they're interested, and just answering those questions for them.
Yep, yep. And on that same note, what got you interested in law enforcement?
This comes up a lot. So this July, actually, will be 15 years total, be a police officer. But it really started when I was a little kid, Dale. Man, when I was like 3 years old. And it's crazy to think about, because I never wavered from this. Some people have a dream when they're young, and they don't follow through on it. For me, it wasn't just a dream; it was a calling. Like, for me, there was no other alternative, no other option. That is what
Mm,
I knew I had to do, was going to be actually doing that. So people, how do you know it's at a young age? I think a lot of people have dreams when they're a kid and they say different things but don't follow through on it for various reasons. But for me, it really cultivated by seeing my parents like help other people with nothing in return, but also be on the needing side, right? My earliest memories is living in a trailer beside my grandparents' home on a separate lot beside them. And I remember growing up with parents who were great and loving and whatnot, but there were times where we needed help. And so help from community members and government agencies and things like that. And so being on the receiving side of being helped, but also seeing my parents do things to help other people with nothing in return, I think gave me that innate desire to want to serve and help other people. And to be honest with you, growing up in a rural county, the deputies had take-home cars. I thought that was pretty neat. You get your own police car, you
yeah.
can take home, and that aspect of it. But I grew up watching Rescue 911 and Cops and In the Heat of the Night. Anything that was law enforcement related, I watched. I loved it, and again, it just fueled my desire to want to do it. So
Did you know anybody that was in law enforcement?
I didn't. That's the craziest thing, right? I didn't. No one close to my family was in law enforcement or the military. I remember when I was about 6 years old, there was a deputy who lived across the street from me, but I never talked to him. Like, I saw his police car
Mm,
there, but just didn't have a connection with him or anything. But no one close to my family was in military or law enforcement. My parents used to do things though, like they would take us to a local rescue squad for holidays, and so we get to interact with them and like see the station and drop off cookies and those kinds of things. So I had that connection with public safety a little bit that way. That's actually where I started, is in the EMS field, though.
okay. So then you went to the rural department where you were at. How long were you there?
So James City County, from where I lived, it's about 30 minutes, so not too far from where I'm actually born. But I was there for from 2009 to 2013, so just over 4 years or so.
Yeah, a little while there. How was that
Mm-hmm.
experience for you?
It was actually pretty good. The interesting thing is, when you start and get a little backing more on me, right, is going into law enforcement. I was like, I don't care if I get married. I don't care if I have kids. I'm just gonna be a cop, and that's gonna be my life. That's really how like
Yep.
into it I wanted to be. And starting there, I actually did an internship there while I was in college. And then when I graduated from college in May of 2009, I graduated, and then July of 2009 is when I went to the police academy for our James City County Police Department. Great experience. I mean, obviously you're young, you're learning things. I think the biggest thing there, getting into law enforcement, dealing with situations, is really enhancing my communication skills with people. I can think of an instance where I used to like doing traffic stops. And I'm pulling over this lady one time for violation, and went up to her window. Same thing I do. You introduce who I am, the reason why I stopped them, and then she tried to give me some excuses, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. And I went back, wrote my ticket, gave it to her, and she left. And I remember going to court. That is something that really stood out to me and kind of changed how I processed and dealt with people. I remember going to court, and she testified. She said she wasn't. She said she pleaded not guilty, and so that I had to share the reason why I stopped her and all those things, my PC and all those things, where I charged her. And the only thing she shared with the judge was that, Your Honor, the officer didn't listen to me of what I was trying to explain, like her perspective, her side of the story, why she did what she did. And the judge just dismissed it. Right? I was like, oh, okay. And so I learned something there is that, in something that really helps generally in life is allow people to share their side of whatever situation is, whether it makes a difference or not. But a lot of people have that part of the process, and at least being heard usually helps for a better outcome. So that's something I learned as far as the communication aspect of things early on in my career.
Yeah, that's usually the best way to go about things, is to let people voice whatever they're going through, whatever they did, what they did, and all that sort of stuff. Now they have a term for it called procedural justice, but it's something we all should have been doing way back when.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I teach is fair and impartial policing. That's a large portion of that towards the end, is to talk about procedural justice and those neutrality and voice and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Voice is the big component of that.
Mm-hmm.
For real. So then you decided to go to Chesapeake. How big, first of all, is Chesapeake, the city and the department?
Yeah, so about 353 square miles for the city, over 250,000 citizens or residents for the city of Chesapeake. Our department authorized strength is 402 full-time sworn officers and 4 part-time officers. So we are a decent size agency. The previous one I was with was only about 100 officers, but right now we're just over 400, and we're looking to increase. So that's a lot of things on me too with recruiting. We're looking to increase because our city is really expanding. We have the Dollar Tree headquarters is located in Chesapeake, and they're building a large like Summit Point area in the city of Chesapeake as well. So there's a lot of things that are coming to Chesapeake where we need help with the department to grow as well with it.
Yeah. Yep. And since you've been there, talk about some of the things you've done.
Yeah. So when I started here, I always tell people this, and in recruiting, again, I love being a police officer and recruiting. And so I always be transparent with people though. And I always tell them, results may vary, right? Because when I started here, I transferred in. So I did a day at our academy. I got sworn in. I did one day at our academy doing firearms training and some basic training there to kind of understand a little bit of how they do things at Chesapeake. And then most of my initial training, since I was already a police officer in Virginia, was doing field training. So on the job training, doing those types of things. So within 3 months of joining the department, I was able to start teaching some classes at our academy. And then within 10 months, I got on our honor guard unit. So just over 10 years, I've been on the honor guard. I've been teaching there almost the whole entire time I've been there as well. At one point, I was a police explorers advisor. So teenagers who are interested in law enforcement, working with them, kind of like a leadership program to get them interested, to help them with learning about law enforcement and making sure this is the career they want to go into. So did that on our peer support team, our crisis intervention team, a lot of other things, crime prevention. So full-time assignment starting out was uniform patrol, which was great. And then I transferred into our crime prevention unit. So I was a certified crime prevention specialist for the city, doing community programs. So I tell people this, the easiest way is like one morning I could be sitting down on the floor, reading books to preschoolers, and later that day standing up and giving a senior safety presentation, 50 senior citizens about how to protect themselves, keep themselves safe. We'd also doing security assessments. So going to residences and businesses, doing security assessments, and then giving them a detailed consultation on or report on how to make their location safer and things of that nature. So we did that for about a year and a half, and then an opportunity came open for our full-time police recruiter position, and applied for that and got to that position, which I really love it. Something I'm always telling the newer officers is, don't try to fit into a mold of what you think you should be when you get into the culture of law enforcement. Think about your skills, your talents, ability you bring to the table, and see what fits you best, where you can serve the best. And for me, I just love the role of supporting people, coaching people, and public speaking. I love that aspect of things in law enforcement. So it's really nice to be able to do that. And that's one of the things too in law enforcement, you've been in for a while, is that as you progress through your career, you can do different things, and you can be able to figure out what your skill set is and kind of work towards using those skills in law enforcement in various roles.
Yeah, it seems like that's the theme that I've gotten from you so far. Is mentorship is a big thing with you, coaching, and and now in recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yep. And are you guys hitting recruiting hard? Are you guys down a lot of bodies like a lot of agencies across the country?
Yeah, so we are. It's challenging right now. It is.
Yeah.
It's kind of a plus, pro and con of it, right? So we're not as we don't have the challenges like some local agencies do as far as the vacancy numbers. Right now, last heard last week was about 47 vacancies for the department. But again, that's going to be on paper, right? So how many vacancies I actually have that I could actually hire for? We have other people, right, that people don't realize too, where it's like people are military leave or they might be injured, so they're not able to actually fully work out in the field at the time.
Yeah.
So at the patrol level, it's a little bit more challenging. But 47 vacancies. We have this year will be the most academies we've started ever in 1 year. So we started one in January, started one in May, about to start another one in August, and right now I'm accepting applications for an academy that starts in November. So this is where, to answer your question, yes, we're hitting it hard to try to get people in. 2025 is coming about, and I know a lot of agencies have been talking about this. Retirements, at least in this area, is on the rise just because
Yep.
of the years in service and the big push back in early 2000s of people getting into law enforcement. So we're planning for that as well for people who will be retiring also.
Yep. Are you finding it challenging finding people nowadays that want to get into law enforcement? I remember when I first got in, there were lines around the block for applying for these
Yeah,
jobs, and maybe not so much anymore.
it's so different. So I started recruiting in 2018. Things were really good. I remember when I first started, my sergeant at the time was like, "Hey, when you have some downtime, we'll have you do such and such." I'm like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Where's that downtime? Like, I haven't seen it." So in 2018, we did have a lot of people just applying. You didn't have to really follow up with them; they just applied. They started going through the process. 2020, a lot of things happened in 2020, right? And so pivotal moments for us. One is COVID, which in law enforcement, at least for us, we saw an uptick in applications because we were still recruiting, we were still training people, we weren't shutting down. We're still a service that's needed, so we were still recruiting heavily. Where
Yep.
other businesses were shutting down, so people were applying. So I saw applications start to rise, and whenever something happens nationally, especially what happened in Minneapolis with the George Floyd incident, at that point applications plummeted, right? And so the national perception of law enforcement at the time had a lot of people second guessing, do I really want to do this? And so I remember a gentleman coming to a testing as a black male. He was interested in being a police officer, and he showed up for the PAT after he applied online. And he was like, my family is pretty much disowning me because I want to follow through on this and step up and be a police officer and be a police
Really?
officer. Yeah. And so my thing
Wow.
is this: I believe we still get applications, right? And it's different now because I have to really follow up with people and really connect with them and answer their questions.
Hmm.
And my biggest thing in my job is really helping people to eliminate uncertainty as much as possible, right? A lot of people have self doubts about why they think they can't do it and those types of things. And then you have people who say, don't get into law enforcement because it's dangerous and all these types of things. But my thing is this: if you know someone who may serve well as a police officer, encourage them to do it because we need more good police officers in law enforcement, just in general,
Yep.
right? We need more good human beings to step up. So a lot of times the people I speak with are people who are interested in it, but they have some uncertainties, and it really takes just clarity. And I always tell people this: my job as a recruiter is not to talk you into this job. It's too important of a position to try to get someone to sneak someone into the position, right? To trick them into it. My job is to give you all the information I can so you can make the most informed decision for yourself. Hopefully, this will be a police officer, be with us until you retire or whatnot. But it may not be, and I know it's not the case for everyone. It's not for everyone. So that's the biggest thing: is the people I think who want to do it, who don't step up to do it because of self doubts.
Yeah, but are you finding that people are finding that this isn't a career for them, nowadays because, various reasons, but, there's more options for kids
Yes.
today to get
Mm-hmm.
into, different career fields, remote work, work from home
Yep. I was gonna say that.
sorts of
Yeah.
things and other benefits and things like that. So we have to compete with those.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a big sacrifice to be in law enforcement, right? The reality
Yeah.
of it is 24/7 operations, right? You're going to work for holidays, and I've missed so many things over being in law enforcement 15 years and then being an EMT. Like I missed so many things with family life over the years. But yes, there are so many more opportunities now. The technology aspect of things where you can make money online now, right? You don't have to leave your
Yeah.
house and get paid. And so it really, I think it connects to the people who have that part of service. I speak to a lot of military members, especially in this area. We have the largest naval base in the world. It's located right here in Norfolk, Virginia. So a lot of military members in this area. And so a lot of them, when they get out of the military, they still want to serve and be a part of something. And so they come directly to law enforcement. But there's many that I speak with who get out of the military, get a regular job, whether it be working from home or working behind a desk somewhere, making decent money, like really good money,
Yeah.
and they don't want to do that because they don't feel like fulfilled. And so the avenue of law enforcement, I think, will still always be there for certain people because they really have that heart to want to serve and help. But it changes this, right? I always tell people this is like you look at the military. Not every single person that joins the military stays there until they retire. The military already has it set up to understand, hey, there's some people who are going to come here and do their 4 years and get out. There's some people going to stay here, promote, do different things, and stay here, maybe retire, right? And so it's kind of a different philosophy with law enforcement. Back in the day, it's used to people getting in and staying until retirement. It is what it is, right? You just accept what your terms are. But there's, like you said, Dale, there's so many opportunities out there now that we have to compete with. And so the big part now is how can we make law enforcement still be that profession where people want to stay in for a long time? We have some people who come to the agency and they go to another agency, or they move out of state. It is what it is. We've had some people leave and go to Florida. Actually, a couple people have left and moved to Florida to be police officers there, and then they came back to us, right? And so it's not, some people think it's greener on the other side. It's varies, right? It really depends on what your perspective is, right? That's the biggest thing is your perspective and what you actually want.
Yeah. So, as your job as a recruiter over there, kind of sell Chesapeake right now.
Yeah. So one of the great things about Chesapeake, when you think about law enforcement, it's hard to understand sometimes if you're not in law enforcement yet, is the biggest thing. One thing that drew me to Chesapeake, because I moved out to this area about an hour away from where I was working before, because I got married in 2012. Heard a lot of good things about the city of Chesapeake and their police department, the training process at the academy. And the location is great because you're close to the ocean front, but we don't deal with some of the challenges that other neighboring jurisdictions deal with. I'll give you an example. We have sent many of our officers to other agencies to help them with different protests and things they've had in the past. Whereas in our city, we've had protests, but they've all been peaceful. And we actually, partnered with and make sure everything was good to go. So it's kind of a hometown feeling, although it's a large city. We have 6 precincts spread out across our city. We currently use 5 precincts for uniform patrol. So when you get in, not everything like it used to be back in the day. It's not where, hey, you get in and, you haven't been here very long, that you're not going to get different specialized units and things like that. They look at what are your skills and talents you have that you bring to the table. Everyone typically does their first couple of years, starting out in the academy and the uniform patrol. But then from there, the doors open up for you. I've seen officers who have not been in the department very long get into different specialized units where years ago that was unheard of. Because now there's people who are stepping up and want to do these things, and they have the skill set to be able to do it. Let's give them a chance. But I think the biggest thing for us is our take-home car policy. You can use your vehicle anytime you want, whether you're on duty or off duty. You can use it to go shopping. People can ride with you if you choose to. We have officers who obviously have marked police cars if they're in patrol. Then some officers have unmarked vehicles, those things as well. But the large part about it is your training. I always tell people this. When you're looking to get into a career field, join an organization or something like that, first off, figure out what your core values are. Figure out what that organization's core values are. But then also, what are your opportunities for growth there? And I can give you the comparison from my previous agency to here, is that having our own academy in Chesapeake allows us to do extra training in the city of Chesapeake. But we also send officers to neighboring jurisdictions and even outside the state for specialized training certifications, which many agencies don't do. And so I always tell people this, really look for that opportunity for training and advancement. That's something that we're going to offer to you, but you have to take advantage of it. And there's so many people who don't, just in various ways, don't take advantage of the ways so that they can actually grow. And that's something when I first started in Chesapeake, I had a first sergeant who just retired last year. And she told me when I started, she was like, hey, put in for trainings. The department really likes to see people who want to better themselves, who want to go to the extra training. So I think that's one of the big aspects is the opportunity for growth and doing various things within a small city feel, but a large atmosphere. We have various ways of, like, one part of the city is more urban, where you're dealing with more violent crimes, or you could be assigned to a different part of the city, a different precinct area that borders the state of North Carolina, where it's more rural. And so you get an opportunity to put in to work different parts of the city each year if you choose to. So you have that variation of work all year for the same police department, though.
That's cool. I'm going to have to check out Chesapeake one of these days
when
I get down there. Yeah. So you were talking about the take-home car program. My agency, we sort of had the same sort of thing. I'm in detectives now, so I have a plane car that I can take home. But back when I was on patrol years ago, I didn't want a marked unit to take home. Maybe it's a little different out here in Southern California, where you don't even want your neighbors to know that you're a cop. I don't know, but
I got
it's that
you.
sort of thing. Yeah, and I've had a few situations where my marked unit even coming home was an eyesore, and I didn't like that. So yeah, maybe it's a little different in Virginia.
It varies, yeah. Like there's not many agencies that allow take-home vehicles. There's some people who, just like you said, just for whatever reasons, they don't want the car parked in their driveway or their yard or
Nope.
whatnot, because just the uncertainty of things sometimes.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about Chesapeake, and we have our issues, right, that every city has, but for the most part, it's a city as far as the community and the police department has a fairly decent relationship. And I think it goes back to our connection with the community programs, things like that. But a lot of people show appreciation for us. But living in Chesapeake now, like when I worked in James City County, I didn't live in the county. I had a take home car, but I lived outside the county. And the interesting thing about having a police car where you live is that your neighbors know you're a police officer, and even when you're off, they're going to come to you for help from time to time. And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
one of the things that is another thing for it. It's a great benefit, right? You get strapped to and from work. You're saving on gas money. But you're also making yourself more readily accessible as a police officer to help people,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
even when you're off.
And that has its pluses and minuses for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
not when you trying to watch the Laker game and you got the knock on the door. Hey Dale, can you help me out with this? I'm as neighborly as the next guy, but
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Right. Yep.
yeah, it is. So what do you kind of like to do when you're not working?
It's a good question. So, as a father and a husband, most of my time is
Yeah.
spent with my kids when I'm off.
There you go.
One of my things too is public speaking. So that's kind of my side thing. I love teaching and speaking, so I'll do that from time to time. My big thing is playing with the kids. Like just before we jumped on the call, I was playing laser tag with my son. We just got a little laser tag set for him. But that's really
Nice.
my biggest part. My family and I go to church, so we're involved as far as going to church and those types of things. But I think the biggest thing is really spending time with my kids. I don't have any specific sports or any type of hobby as far as that I do, but just different family time activities with the kids. We're always on the go. It's really interesting to me when I talk with people. Some people don't leave Chesapeake very much. I mean, you have everything you really need in the city, but I have family in different locations, and my wife and I, my kids, we like to travel and do different things. So whether it be a road trip somewhere for a weekend or whatnot. So that's usually my time off is usually just with my family for the most part.
That's great. One of the things why I wanted to do this podcast when I started it years ago was to show people that, we're people too. We like to do things. We're not just robots that, say sir and ma'am and that's it. And by
Yep.
the book and all that, like on Dragnet years ago. But, we like to play sports, we like to dance. We like to go to movies.
Yeah.
We like to do all these sorts of things. And we're people too. And, and maybe if you see or hear that, maybe you want to be part of what we do as well.
Yep. Yeah. And that's really a good point, Dale, because a lot of people, people sometimes will ask me what's the most challenging part of my job. And I'll usually say wearing the uniform, right? Because it's a certain bias that comes with it. When they see the uniform, they'll say, oh, you remind them of a negative issue they may have dealt with in the past, or
Yeah.
TV, news, those types of things. And so usually that's the challenge. They don't see you as a human being, they see that uniform.
Yes.
And so as much as possible, I try to be human with people, like connect with people. It's okay to smile. I tell people, right? You can smile. Now, not every day, not every situation, but for the most part, we can smile and connect with people as human beings. We're the only ones, get this, Dale, we're the only ones who can change the perspective of law enforcement, are the ones who actually are police officers now, right? And how we interact with people. And so, yeah, that's the big thing is that we're humans, and that's the unknown of the community sometimes is people put us on this pedestal as being these perfect people, right? Yes, we go through this training, we do all these different things. Yes, we should be held to a high standard. Yes, but we're human beings. And innately, human beings make mistakes. There are no perfect people, right? And so that's the biggest thing I think, again, too, for people getting into law enforcement. There's so many people who contact me and like, back 10 years ago, I had a guy call me not too long ago. So back 10 years ago, I got a speeding ticket. Is that going to disqualify me? I'm like, no, it's not. We're not perfect. Big thing is be honest and be sincere with us. I have to understand we're human beings, just like you. It's just the job that we're in. It's the training we've gone through.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We got locked up there for a minute. You good there? Can you hear me?
Okay. I'm here. Yeah.
It's like you're lagging.
I can hear you.
It's like your video's lagging there. Okay, now I can see your eyes
Okay,
moving.
are we
There you
back
go.
now?
There you
Okay,
back.
I'm still. You still with me? All right, all right. Okay.
We're still there. We're still there. Yeah, we're talking about being human in this profession,
Yes.
and we do make mistakes. Um, the challenging part is if with a lot of the media, all these body cam videos that are out nowadays, the transparency in that people see exactly what goes on a daily on an incident. What are your feelings on the transparency on that? People see that we do make mistakes, and sometimes they see that we're doing more than making mistakes. We're actually, there are actually some bad cops out there. What are your feelings on that? On the transparency on releasing these sorts of things.
Yeah, I think transparency is great. I think it's challenging because just like human beings at a normal basis, right? We don't really like to share our faults and
Yep.
vulnerabilities, especially from the department level, because then there's other challenges with that if you do that. But the big thing is this: is we have to. The community knows we're not perfect. We're human beings, and so just in general, things I've seen on the news and things like that, right? I think transparency is great. I'll give you this: when I worked in James City County, we had in-car cameras. And then I heard when I was applying to Chesapeake, they're like, "Oh, they got body cameras." So this was back in like 2008 was the first time the city of Chesapeake actually started issuing body cameras to some of the officers. So this is
Oh, they
pre-Ferguson,
were
like
ahead of the
early on.
curve.
Yes, yeah, and that's how
Yeah.
advanced our department has been. Our chief, who retired just a couple of years ago, Chief Kelvin Wright, he was the chief of police for 14 years, and he actually had NYPD actually came down and met with him at one point about implementing the program up there. So this was years ago. So this is pre the push for transparency. But I think transparency is great. One of the things that was really interesting when I first started in law enforcement is when I first early time of going to testify in court when I was in James City County, and I shared why I pulled someone over for speeding or whatever it may have been. And I remember the defendant sharing their side of the story, whatever happened. And I remember the judge saying, "Well, this is what the officer said, and that's what happened." And I was like, "Wow, just so just our word back then, like that's really perfect. That's how officers and human beings making poor decisions or doing things that they maybe should not be doing, and that come to light. Now it's the body cameras and things for transparency. I think it's a plus that we have more transparency, but I think that the big part is we as a society have to get to the point of being more vulnerable and understanding that we are not. I'm not better than you or better than the person who's not wearing the uniform, right? We all go through different circumstances, and when we try to act perfect, I think that's when the challenges come in instead of just showing up and being honest about who we are and how we've handled things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So, what are the kind of the most rewarding parts of your job?
The most rewarding parts is really being able to connect with people who are low on hope. And I say this, as a police officer, people know that we write tickets and we take people to jail, right? That's our job. We have the authority to do that. Pretty much no one else does. But there's so many other facets of law enforcement. Every single call we respond to, we're always communicating with people. Right? You show up, you've got the verbal, you've got the your body posture, so your nonverbals, the officer presence, and then you have that verbal communication where you're listening to them, you're sharing information, that kind of thing. And so my biggest benefit or biggest thing I like about law enforcement, really connect with people who are down on their hope, where they really need some help with whatever situation they're dealing with. And something you can say can possibly help them change their life. One of the most interesting things to me is when I have arrested someone in the past and we've gone to court. I've testified against them. The judge finds them guilty and they turn to me and shake my hand and say, "Thank you." Not being facetious or conceited or anything like that. They're really genuinely saying thank you, not
Yep.
for being guilty, but how we treated them. And I hear that from countless other officers as well when they go to court. So I think that's the biggest part is, again, it goes back to that part of changing the perspective of law enforcement, how we appear to the community is one individual at a time. Like you as an officer, as a detective, when you deal with someone. But that's one of the most rewarding things for me is really seeing that change in someone's life based on something you've said or done. Do I have time for a quick story, Dale?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So
It's just
there
us,
was
man. We
a
got time.
okay, cool. So there was an incident I dealt with years ago, and this gentleman I dealt with. First time I dealt with him was he was doing donuts in a parking lot when it was snowing. All right, cool. We said, "Hey, you can't be doing this," and he left. And then a few months later, dealt with him. It was a fight call in a front yard. It's like a Friday night, and we get there. There's about four guys in the front yard. One person's intoxicated. We try to separate them, and the one guy who's intoxicated happened to be the same guy we had dealt with before. Was doing donuts in the parking lot. And we ended up having to take him to the ground, put him in cuffs and all these things. Big ordeal. Calling me all kinds of names and stuff. It is what it is. So he goes to jail that night for drunk in public. And then about 2 years later, I had to respond to his residence because he called in a robbery report, excuse me, a burglary report. So he left home for a little while, came back, a bunch of stuff was stolen. Now, I dealt with him before, right? But I could not have any of the animosity. I couldn't, like, that's the thing. Being a police officer, you really have to get your character right, right? When you look for people to get into law enforcement, you have that right heart posture mindset, because it's not a point where you try to pay someone back, or I'm not a punisher as a police officer, right? I find the facts, I use the facts, the courts deal with punishment, right? It is what it is. So I took his report just like I would take anyone else's report. Long story short, it ended up being that he stole the stuff from his house. He had some drug problems. I met with the detective, we met with the parents, and we talked about the situation. He actually went and got help. And so dealing with him cordially and dealing with his parents, ultimately this guy was able to get help, right? From a situation where my encounter I had with him before was super terrible, to now his parents are thanking me for how we treated him and how we cared about him. That is what law enforcement is about. It's so hard though, as human beings. Naturally, when someone yells at you or whatever, like naturally your natural emotions for most people, you want to kind of give it back to them. But that's the thing, every single day when you're dealing with people, you have to have that emotional intelligence to be able to hone in your emotions and not give it back to them, but really think about why you're doing what you're doing. And one of the things that helps me is I'm always thinking about this person just doesn't know what they're doing, right? The actions that they're making, whatever they got going on, whatever the environment, their experiences have led them to this decision, what they're doing right now. But if they really truly knew the real me, the heart of how I am to really want to help them, they wouldn't be talking to me this way. And so again, it's that part of seeing them still as a human being, and that no one's perfect, people make mistakes. But again, seeing that change in people is one of the most rewarding things for me.
Absolutely, that's a great story right there. And on the flip side, what's the kind of the more challenging part of your job?
Yeah, I think it brings me back to one story of when early on in my career. A lot of times people think that as a police officer you have a lot of authority, which you do. But there's some things you don't have authority over, you don't have control over. I remember responding to a call. This is actually the first time I think I can be vulnerable with you, right? First time I ever cried at work. Genuinely, I responded to a call for a daycare provider, an in-home daycare provider had called saying that she had some kids who reported to her they were being abused by their mom's boyfriend, and they were scared to go home. And so the daycare provider was keeping them, wouldn't let the mom pick up the kids. So the daycare provider calls us and tells us this. Then the mom calls us and says, "Hey, this lady's not letting me pick up my kids." And so then we got this big ordeal. And so we had to speak with Child Protective Services. They're the ones who primarily have that main authority over child issues and things like that. And so long story short is we spoke with CPS. They talked with the mother. They talked with the daycare provider. And the decision was made through CPS that the kids need to leave the home, leave the daycare provider's home, and go with their mother. CPS said they spoke with the mother and that they had made an agreement. The mother agreed that the boyfriend wasn't going to come to the house or be near the children until after they talked with them in person and did their investigation. And so it was really hard for me to have to go to this house, to this daycare lady's house, and tell these kids, "Hey, you got to go with your mom," because they were so terrified. You could tell that whatever the situation may, I don't know exactly what it was, how they were being abused exactly, but you could tell they were so terrified to leave this home of comfort with the daycare provider to go with their mom. And again, something was out of our control, where it wasn't up to me, right? Again, I have authority as a police officer. There's certain things I don't have authority over. And so that was one of the most challenging things. It may seem so simple to some people, but like that, when you have to make a decision that you don't have a power over, it's something that for me was tough. Was tough because I could really see and like feel their pain and what they were dealing with.
Yeah, those are always tough situations to deal with, especially when you have kids of your own. You can see your kids in those kids.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, all right. So, we're both African Americans. What does your department look like as far as the diversity of it?
Yeah. So with our department, we have about 20% male, female. And then for African Americans, it's about 13% for the department. So the city is about 30% for African Americans. So we are, with other departments as well, right, trying to increase our diversity. One of the interesting things when I left James City County to come to Chesapeake, and I'll be honest with you, when I was there was only maybe a handful of black males in James City. And then when I came to Chesapeake, I was like, there's going to be a whole lot more black males. And more competition and things like that. And when I came here, the nice thing about it is the guy I actually worked with when I first started, we clicked, right? We had similar backgrounds. It was a great time working together with him because I didn't have those opportunities back in my previous agency. So having that, and then also the big thing too coming in is our chief at the time, Kelvin Wright, the black male, as well. Our deputy chief currently is a black male. So having that diversity throughout the ranks really helps, I think, with recruitment as well. But for me, some people ask the things of like being a black male and being a police officer, like, do you have any issues or challenges? Internally, I've not had any issues. Some people have stories about internally the department and things like that, issues they dealt with. I have not. Responding to calls, right? You have people who will call you different names and things like that. And it is what it is when you're responding to those situations. But fortunately, that's one of the things I prayed about too with getting into law enforcement in general, is I would never be put in a situation where there'd be some issue where I'd have to morally, ethically, or anything like that would have some challenges internally with the department, which fortunately I have not, as far as my experiences as a police officer.
Yeah. I would kind of liken it to, one of the reasons why I got into law enforcement was, one, I wanted to serve and help people. But another thing was I wanted to help people that were wronged by law enforcement. And I would say not on my watch. So like you, I've never been put in a situation. I've never seen anything untoward in my presence. But is that kind of a chicken and egg thing? It's not done in front of you. So that's why you don't have to experience it. And then, once Dupree goes away or Dale goes away, they go do their dirt. What do you think about that?
That's a question. I don't know. I don't know that, from my perspective, I don't know that's something that I have and this could be different for other people. I don't know from my perspective that my presence makes that big of a difference with the people that I work with, though.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's how I look at it. I look at it as, if I'm stopping somebody, I work with great people in different agencies all over throughout the years. So I would like to think that they're not doing anything immoral on their own. But, hopefully my presence kind of helps with that as well. Yeah. All right. So, let's talk about, what you want to do in your career in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, so promotional process is coming up again this year. So every 2 years, we have a promotional process. So, I'm in a position that I really enjoy, being the recruiting. But the next step for me is looking into becoming a sergeant, moving up the ranks, right, to have greater influence in the department over certain things. One of the neat things, I think, as a police officer, and I think comes together with character and how you carry yourself and things like that, your connections with people, is that without a title, I have had an invitation to seats at tables that other people have not. And so it's been nice to be able to have kind of the influence in certain ways that way. But I think the next step is the actual career progression is going to be taking the promotional exam, and the plan would be for next year to be promoted to sergeant in the department. Going as far as like different positions and things like that, I've been interested in our public information officer position. That's an officer position, so it's not a sergeant position type of deal. But hopefully, my idea is become a sergeant, and hopefully at some point circle back and be part of recruiting, just at more of a leadership level, though.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna help you out here on your promotional test here. So
okay, go ahead. Let me take some notes.
Well, because one of these questions is going to be about emotional intelligence and things of that nature. Looking at yourself and looking at situations you've been in. So talk about a situation where you've made a mistake and you've learned from it, and it made you a better officer, made you a better person.
Yeah, I think circling back to really the communication aspect of it, and that's one of the big things too, is how to communicate with people. So circling back some more with communication aspects. So when I was young and get into law enforcement, I remember, not in law enforcement, but I remember someone saying, "You're too nice to be a police officer," right? And so early on, I got to the point where sometimes I thought I needed to raise my voice to be more authoritative and more respected as a younger officer. But I learned early on that's not actually the case. One of the things I did on my own was going through those skills, those aspects of speaking, those types of things, and really seeing how, again, working on my communication skills changed so many things for me. Actually, doing it on my own, I was able to get on a crisis negotiations team at my previous agency because I had such a vested interest in improving my communication skills. So overall, not just at work, but it's helped me at home a little bit as well with connecting with people and just being more open to listening when someone has something to share.
Yeah. How do you improve your communication skills? Did you take any courses? Did you just work with people, talking and relating with other people?
Yeah. So I think overall, being in law enforcement in general, but verbal judo. So I read that book and went through the seminar for verbal judo, public speaking classes, and then on my own, just looking for opportunities to speak, to connect with people. Doing the peer support team, being a crisis intervention team member as well. All those things that have helped with the communication aspect of the job, like learning about myself, communication aspects. But I think it circles back to really connecting with, be more empathetic, right? Connecting with how's the perspective of the person I'm dealing with right now? How are they seeing the situation? And listening to not just what they're saying, but more so like with their emotions are possibly shared as well, more internally. If that makes sense.
Okay. And as we wrap this up, talk about a case or an incident you were involved in throughout your career that you're especially proud of. When people say, look back at your career, this is something that you bring up.
Oh man. I think the biggest aspect is becoming an instructor. There are so many things in life that we have to see as police officers because you're called to actually respond or have to deal with the situation. And especially as early on in the career of law enforcement, like you want to see things and you talk about all these different things, but we have to be mindful of overexposure and things. So I think my biggest accomplishment for me when I look back over it is really standing up and being that person who, in saying things or sharing things that maybe other people aren't sharing. Because as a law enforcement officer, we don't have to culturally fit in. I remember an officer asking me one time, we were sitting out for lunch, and he says, hey, how do you fit in, like being a police officer in general, like if you don't drink? I said, well, I'm not here just to try to fit in. Like you don't have to drink to be a police officer. And so there's so many people I think in law enforcement who think they have to fit this cultural, this cultural setting, this perspective of what it takes to be a police officer, or be in the military, or whatever it may be. And we lose our individuality. Whereas really where our assignment in law enforcement is to bring your whole self to the career, because there's something about your perspective, something about your presence that can change the atmosphere and help everyone grow and elevate to the next level of what we need to do as far as serving the community better. So I think that's the biggest part is I'm proud of finally getting to the point where I can be comfortable with sharing my perspective. And again, circles back to mentoring people on you don't have to just fit in, be who you're called to be. And really serve from that heart of love and empathy. I think it's one of the biggest aspects for me, and what's most rewarding for me is that aspect. Again, in recruiting, but also dealing with people, but also really that big part in the early end of people coming into the department and hopefully helping them set their perspective right on law enforcement, not just try to fit in, but be who you were called to be specifically.
Yeah. Yep. And you kind of answered my next question, was kind of give some advice to anyone aspiring to get into this profession. Maybe you can expound on that before I get you out of here.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is character. I tell people to think about who you actually are, right? We can teach you the law enforcement skills. Well, what type of person are you? What type of heart do you have? Simple things like, do you help people already? A lot of people say when they get into they want to get into law enforcement because they like helping people. And I say, well, that's great. Who are you helping now, right? How do you help people now? Because you don't have to wear the badge and uniform to help people. So having that servant's heart is so important. When you're walking down the street, when you're walking into a building, like, do you hold the door from someone? Or if there's trash nearby, do you pick up that trash? Like the little things, your character, how do you care about the community means a lot when you get into law enforcement. Because your character is going to show up as a police officer as well, right? When you put that badge uniform on, it doesn't just make you a perfect person, but it's going to show some more about your character that might be hidden within you, right? So again, work on your character, good communication skills, physical fitness is good. The biggest thing, and I say this almost every single day, is understand that no one is perfect. So we don't expect you to be, but we do expect you to be honest, because honesty is so important. If you lie about something in the hiring process, especially if you're a police officer and you lie about something, you're done. You're done. So again, get comfortable with your mistakes, learn from them. Because when we have you in the hiring process to become a police officer, we want to also know that you're the type of person who can own to your mistakes, learn from them, and keep it moving. Because as a police officer, you'll still be a human being. You'll most likely make mistakes because that's what human beings do. And we just need to know now that you have that mindset, that heart, that character, where you'll actually own up to whatever mistakes it is and keep it moving.
And keep it moving. Great words to live by. Yep. All right, brother. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your perspective and your story with us. And anyone looking to be a Chesapeake police officer, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, you can visit us online at joincpdnow.com. You have all my contact information on there, and you can also schedule a meeting with me one-on-one if you choose to sit down and do a virtual meeting like we're doing now, or do a phone call. We can do that. I'd love to support you.
Cool. Hey, what's the process for anyone out of state? Not that I'm looking at, but we got viewers viewers and listeners all over the country. People out of state. What is there a different process for them?
A little bit. So same steps in the hiring process for the most part. The state of Virginia has kind of opened the doors up a little bit for people who want to transfer into the state. They do require you have at least 3 years of consecutive law enforcement experience. That's going to be with a state or local agency. We were serving, like responding to 911 calls, handling accidents, those types of things, taking people to jail. Where you could actually possibly transfer into a modified academy that's only about 8 weeks long. It's more so like a collegiate style academy. So we're not going to be OC spraying you and doing all the things as you would for a regular basic academy. But with us, we'll pay up to 14 years of experience typically for Chesapeake. So if you have up to 14 years of experience, that'll put you in a certain part in our pay plan. So you're not going to start with the base pay when you start out.
All right.
Still
Good
there?
to know. But for somebody with no experience, but let's say they live in Georgia or they live in Arizona, and they want to move to Chesapeake, is there like an expedited hiring so they don't have to go back and forth for each step? Is there like a process where they can do it in a weekend or something, or a week?
Yeah, so it's going to be spread out a little bit through the hiring process. The initial visit would be just to pass the physical ability test. There's an obstacle course at our academy. And once they pass that, they'll then be assigned to a background investigator, usually within about a week. And once they're assigned to that background investigator, they'll work with them on consolidating some of the trips. So they don't have to come back as much. There are some visits they'll have to make in person in the city of Chesapeake to actually get moved through the process.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So Chesapeake, Virginia is waiting for you.
That's right.
So see Dupree for all right there. All right, brother. Hey, man, I appreciate you. You be safe out there, and good luck in bringing all these new recruits, new energy into Chesapeake PD.
Thanks. I appreciate you, Dale. Take care, man.
You got it, brother. Take care. All right, fam. That's it for this edition of the Black and Blue Podcast. I want to thank Chesapeake, Virginia Master Police Recruiter Dupree Foster for joining me on this episode. Hey, I appreciate you, sir, and keep doing what you're doing to improve our profession. If you guys appreciated Master Officer Foster too, let me know in the comments section below. I'll be back real soon with another amazing interview, hey, just like this one. But till then, y'all know the phrase, stay black and blue. I'll holler at you. Deuces.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.